Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting of the Virtual Tasting Society. I'm Vadim Perlovsky, and today we're excited to welcome back one of our local whiskey legends, David OG, the spirits buyer from KNL. Today we're tasting six amazing barrels that he casks that he picked of Sherried Scotch. And because I'm under the weather and coughing like a madman, I'm going to pass it over to you and have you introduce it as well.
Have a little scotch. It'll make you feel better. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know me already, I've been selecting barrels for the program at KNL in California since 20 so long ago. 2010-ish is when we really started. And some years ago, we started to, instead of relying on our importer stocks, stock lists, and what have you, we started to go to Scotland, meet bottlers ourselves, and now we import a number of, I would call, important single cask bottlers. And we're going to feature basically our two main suppliers here, uh, Old Particular and Old Malt Cask. These are the two brothers, Douglas Lang, Fred, and Stuart Lang. They've since split their companies in half, split the stocks, and gone off on their separate paths. Hunter Lang is the subsidiary that is now run by Stuart Lang. They own Ardnahoe Distillery on Islay. The Douglas Lang Company created a new brand, Old Particular, when they split, and they own the Strathern Distillery now in the Lowlands, which is quite tiny, very tiny. And they're both dear friends, and we're one of the few people in the whole world that work with both brothers. I've met importers in Japan and other countries who are shocked that we can, work with both, but we've always had a great rapport with each, and they provide us with very high quality barrels at, I think, really compelling price points often. Um, when we're looking for barrels, we're looking to find things that appeal to a wide variety of drinkers for sure. Experts, connoisseurs, that's really our target audience. And so we're looking first for first and second fill barrels mostly. If they're like everything we have here, first and second fill. If it's very old or very special spirit, third and fourth fill are surely considered. That there's nothing technically wrong with that. Just less wood, of course, but we all love wood, and especially when it goes with a great little funky malt like Craigellachie. This is a beautiful distillery just across from Macallan, across the river. That one river that we all know about. And um, it's like pretty ugly distillery. Not a beautiful distillery, but the spirit is very high quality, often has a strong, almost industrial character to it, especially when it's naked. It pairs with sherry beautifully because sometimes heightening the funk, other times tempering it. The sherry is as complex as the malt that goes into the barrel, and there's a lot that goes on there, and so it's hard to pigeonhole distillery. But God, that smells pretty good though, huh? A nice clean Craigellachie. There's a little of that industrial funk behind. What do you guys think of this? Any great big fruity nose? Sorry, I'm gonna grab some water. I'm a big proponent of including water in your Scotch drinking experience. If you're not already, I'm sure you are. It's all pros here.
It's weird. I'm getting what almost tastes like a butterscotch and raisin note.
Yeah, yeah. That's not weird. That's perfect. Beautiful. That's exactly what I'm looking for in this sort of whiskey. There's Yeah, this is for sure one of the sweeter style sherries, right? We're gonna go forward later, and like when you get to the Glenrothes, that also has quite a funky spirit, right? Glenrothes is some people find it sulfury or odd. But when you put it on old funky sherry, it kind of heightens that intensity and kind of doubles down on the funk in a really interesting way. Whereas with the Kregaliki here, we have the sweet sherry, which gives that balance to the depth of the spirit here. I think when you add water, you should see more fruit come out. If I remember correctly. Yeah, now a little bit of like lanolin and kind of more industrial. Give it some air. I love that industrial side of Kregaliki. Sometimes it smells like maybe glue or diesel engine. Not a
When
whole
you're
lot of
adding
diesel here.
when you're adding water to your whiskey, are you adding it generally drops at a time or teaspoon or because
You
that
saw that?
yeah, just a little splash.
Yeah, not a big deal. There's no amount of water that will ruin your whiskey. Now we're 50-50, right?
Mhm.
The aromas here much more heightened. Of course, the palate won't be as rich, textural, and intense. But when you go 50-50, you explode the fruit. It's pure pear. Huge, huge flavors here now. Just a pear bomb now. So,
It
you
definitely get more sweet with the water.
right. You don't get the intensity on the palate. Still butterscotch on the palate, toffee, chocolate. This one loves water. All of these whiskeys are going to love water. It's about your mood, what you're feeling like, what the intensity level like. I don't think you have to be militant about, often I've been sitting with very knowledgeable distillers or whatever, and you see them drinking their whiskey with lots and lots of water, where it becomes almost like a white wine. And then you're having an aperitif because it's 4 o'clock, maybe, right? We're having a meeting. It's not like, uh, you know, they've had a big dinner and they need something to settle the stomach, right?
Essentially a flat highball.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. On a cloudy Isla morning with some cast strength Bercolotti, it's pretty nice.
Mm. Greg Elliott for me has been an interesting distillery. I find it to be funky and it's one of the only space sides that I generally pass when I see a pick on your picks because I've had some that I want to say love or hate, and I haven't loved a lot of them. So
Mm.
this one is
We have different
interesting.
tastes, buddy. I'm a Kregaliki lover, but
And a
I
lot
will
of people
agree
are.
they're kind of odd, skewed, slightly weird. This one's pretty though. This one's rather approachable.
Before I started dying, yeah, that's where I was trying to go. Is that this was very sweet and fruity and very interesting. It's not like a liquid sweet, but it's like a different kind of sweetness. It's funky sweetness. It's interesting. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't have a super strong like malty character, right? Linkwood has this malty, crystalline, pure cereal character. Kregaliki really is showing the foreshots, the feints, and those more heavy aromas. I don't really know. I've actually never been into the Kregaliki distillery, so I've only stood out front. But I have a feeling when you're in there, it probably maybe it doesn't smell or like this, but it probably feels like that Kregaliki industrial character to it. So in some ways, it reminds me sort of some of the Japanese single malts. It gives me a bit of a like a Yoichi vibe. Um, anyway, I think it's quite nice. On to the Daluin. So this is Old Particular. 57%. This is a first fill sherry. Not that dark, you really you can't guess the color in a lot of cases. I probably told this same anecdote last time I was here, but this sort of first fill refill thing is so complex that I'm convinced that most of the distillers don't necessarily understand it. I had an interesting experience when I was tasting casks, single barrels at Glenfarclas back when they sold us single barrels. Well, actually, they never really sold us single barrels. They always wanted us to blend multiple barrels. Except for the first times we were there, they were selling us family casks at relatively reasonable prices. As those prices were published worldwide, they went up significantly. But if we bought two of the same barrel or two of the same year, we could blend them and get them on the shelves for a reasonable price. And so we went in there looking for sort of this is like 2018 going on 2019, looking for 30-year-old stuff to do a small blend. And I asked for first fill. I'm wanting dark. People want Glenfarclas. They think dark sherry, like that's what we're after. And we went through maybe 10 or 15 barrels in this one warehouse, 1989, all across the board. And they're all this color, right? The same color, right? Which is beautiful, but it's not what we were after. And I said to George, these are excellent whiskeys, and I will surely take one of these. But do you have like anything darker, more intense, and more woody, more tannic, more powerful? And he goes, "Oh, you want the refill? You asked for first fill." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought that's how it worked. I mean, this is 6 years ago, but I'd already been in the business for 12 years, something like that." And he's like, "Well, not really. Like, if you imagine in 1989, the barrels that were being dumped first fill, those were likely in many lots, especially the stuff that stuck around, the good stuff, were from whiskeys that would have been distilled in the 50s or 60s, right? And so that's like this other level of sherry that doesn't exist any longer, just older, more intense, more European oak, more extractive. And so those are the great whiskeys that made Glenfarclas famous. But the reuse of that same barrel has a much more intense effect on the malt than the first fill sherry in 1989 when they were making these wines. Nobody was buying them. It was likely younger sherry, well sourced, or maybe Glenfarclas wasn't in as good a position financially to buy such high quality barrels as they were in the late 50s or early 60s. And so we bought a 79 that we loved. It was third fill sherry. And, the explanation was all the 79s are like this because we couldn't buy any first fill that year. We just didn't have the capital. And so, these are the factors that go into, and part of why Scotch has become more homogenized is that these distinctions between vintage, because of the corporate interest, the need for consistency and efficiency in large production Scotch, that they've disappeared. So the big companies have said, we don't want that inconsistency from year to year. We want to have the inputs the same every year, so that we know we have a 12-year-old that tastes the way it's supposed to taste in 12 years. As you smooth out the lows, you smooth out the highs, of course. So hence why modern single malt Scotch is not, it's still, of course, incredibly delicious. And I haven't said anything about Daluin this whole time, but Daluin, another fine distillery, Speyside, right in the same area. Not far, Craigellachie is pretty close to Abelard, which is pretty close to Glenfarclas, which is pretty close to Daluin. It is unique in that, one of the four Diageo malts, they have the dark grain plants on site, which is a facility where all the spent mash from all of the Diageo distilleries is shipped and then dried and made into pellets and sold as animal feed. And so it's a very odd, an unusual site, but makes a great little, very classical space. This also has a lot of toffee. What do you guys think of this one? Anybody?
I'm getting
into it?
some quince paste
Ooh,
somewhere
great
in the
call.
middle.
Yeah.
Quince with, it's almost like it's got a little bit of guava on top of it.
I
And
love quince.
a little bit of lemon in the background. It's really bizarrely fruity.
Like the best weird tea you've ever had. I love that.
Yeah.
I like this style a lot, and I like very fruity Speyside malts, and this one will probably do well to have a little water on it as well.
Balhuon in general is one of those distilleries I always seek out. So
Yeah,
good.
it's a bit of the anti-Kregaliki. It's always really even, very fresh, very rarely put into bad oak. Even if it's neutral, you're like, this style of malt, even if it's third or fourth fill, you get that crispy sort of lemony kind of cereal note, often with Balhuon, and then that sort of brightness pairs beautifully with a pretty sherry like this. This will probably overpower the Glengoyne, I know, but we'll see in terms of that fruity side. I think it's pretty good.
And the waxy quality.
It does have a little spot of that. Not quite, but you're not the first to compare Kleinlich and Balhuon. There are a bit of, it's a different waxed fruit, right? It's more waxy. It's not pears and apples. It's almost like waxy lemon or black. I think quince is a nice note there, but it has this, especially with a lot of water, you start to get into lots of fall flavors here.
Maybe caraboya or starfruit.
Area. I like that starfruit. Yeah, that's great.
Sure, throw out obscure fruits nobody's ever tasted.
There's a fruit, an American fruit that I keep hearing about on NPR. I want to taste desperately. It's native to the Americas. It's got a very silly name. Has anybody had that? Did anybody hear about that?
You talking about pawpaw?
Pawpaw, yes.
Yeah, they're great.
I've never had a pawpaw. Where do you get them?
I would assume you had pawpaw and a mama when you were growing up.
Really?
I knew that was coming out.
Dang.
They're pretty common in the Midwest, although most of us didn't know what we were looking at. It just looks like some sort of funky apple. But they're really quite
tastes good.
Yeah, it's if I'm remembering correctly, custard apple is one of the referral names for it. The texture is a little strange. As I remember,
gooey
it's sort of
slimy.
It's kind of like a mushy banana.
Huh. That sounds
it's not
weird.
awful. Have you had cherimoya?
Yeah.
It's similar to cherimoya, but it doesn't have seeds that'll kill you, so you don't have to worry about biting down on something.
Cherimoya was always a bit chalky to me, or something like that.
Yeah, cherimoya has got a bit of that.
Maybe I didn't have it properly right. I'm not sure.
But yeah, I had it when I was a kid, so it's been a really long time. But it was kind of. I grew up custard apple. It was really good.
Picking loquats in my neighborhood as a kid. I mean, LA people know loquat; they're all over the city. But that's a flavor that people outside of Southern California have never. Loquat, what is that? Most people have never heard of that. I feel the pawpaw is a bit the same. I was obsessed with making loquat wine as a teenager, but never quite convinced enough people to let me raid their loquat trees in my neighborhood. I felt the need to ask for permission to take their fruit. It's terrible. Do people like the Daluin? It seems pretty positive.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I
Goody.
like this. It's good
Yeah.
stuff.
It's good. Good whiskey.
Yeah. I definitely enjoy that like lemon note that comes through. It definitely gives that nice fruity, and it pops out of the glass. So I dig it.
Yeah, I'm glad. All right, Glengoyne. These are very rare to see on the well, Daluin and Craig Ackley we're tearing through samples, and to be honest, I say no to hundreds of them a year. Maybe not hundreds, but 50. And Glengoyne I very, very rarely see on the open market. I'm not sure if that's my suppliers, although I, as a collector or drinker of Scotch, I don't see a lot of independent Glengoyne. Someone might know of a source that I'm not aware of, but it seems to be quite hard to find. Owned by Ian McLeod, Chieftains. They own another distillery as well, Rosebank, and it's barely a Highland malt. Obviously, it's double distilled. It's right on the border. They make a joke when you're there about how it's distilled in the Highlands and aged in the Lowlands because the warehouse is across the street, and then they sort of mark the line of the Highlands right there with the Glengoyne distillery. But most people would look at the map and be like, "Yeah, it's kind of the Lowlands. Like, it's not really the Highlands." It's very, very, very close to Glasgow and Edinburgh right there. So, second fill sherry. So a refill, but not very dark. Malty. This maybe should have come before the Daluin. I think it's been a bit. It's a bit closed now. Lots of vanilla though on the nose. It's a very different character than the last two.
You gotta say, I'm really enjoying that they're all so different.
They are. Ooh, yeah. Coffee. More of the sherry flavor does come forward on the palate. It tells you that the color isn't really that important. Also, a lot of maltiness. It's got a cleanliness that the other two don't have, right? Both the Daluin Spirit has a top note. Craigellachie has a bottom note that's really prominent. This is very seamless and quite short, really, in terms of the depth of the spirit, which is actually, I think, really nice in the sherry. It's a pretty malt. I think this will also love water. I think it's quite closed right now. This will need at least a drop of water to start really talking.
I'm not a fan of the nose.
Have you added water?
No, not yet. But right off the bat,
The nose is definitely funky, but good funky.
no, I mean,
I love
it turns me off. It's not a good funky at all. It's almost like I don't know, some industrial kind of chemical that you don't like. But then you
There is
the taste is totally different from the nose. I really enjoy this.
Yeah, I wonder if that's maybe just the ethanol. Like that's an ethanol flavor. It's a little hot. I mean, ethanol, the aroma of ethanol, which is really not something you're supposed to experience when drinking Scotch, is bitter and has that. I don't have quite the funk that you guys are telling, but maybe it's just I have been drinking, cast strength Russell's Reserve all day, so that was funky.
Yeah, I'm getting paprika notes on it.
Paprika.
Yeah, because I kept having to retaste it because there's something there. It's not, to me, it's not so much fruity, but
no,
it's that paprika note. I think is what I'm getting out of it.
maybe a little bit sulfur.
You find sulfur.
You know what I did is I blew out I blew out what was in the glass and just to clear out what was trapped in the glass.
Yeah.
And the nose is much better now. So
That's good news.
I mean, basically, I think it was just stuff sitting down there, the ethanol type stuff sitting low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get a lot of like that pear skin. It's a lot of pear with water.
On the, on the
The palate is lovely though. You're not wrong about that. Great
nose has some kind
texture.
of spices and herbs. I'm thinking, like, to me, it's like walking into like a Chinese tea shop where there's all these weird spices in the air.
Yeah. Like almost a little like mace, kind of that sort of bitter background spice, that bitter. These also like, we do this so quickly. Like these malts, unfortunately, cast strength whiskey like this, or maybe fortunately, I think this is half the fun. These are going to change in the glass for hours, right? If you can take the time to leave these whiskeys in your glass and aerate them properly and give them the time they need, I think they really, I mean, this has improved significantly with a little bit of water and just be shaking it around like that. It's a little weird. I didn't get to go to Scotland this year, and we usually taste, with Douglas Lang, we taste from fresh samples, but room temperature in their office, which makes everything taste way better when we're there. With some of these other producers, we're tasting out of barrel, which is it's easy to tell good from bad straight out of the distillery, or easy enough. It's really hard to tell good from great in a cold warehouse, low light, tasting that way. So often what we do is taste through several barrels and then pick one or two of our favorites, full samples, bring them back, sit with them. But when we're getting these samples I haven't traveled to Scotland, often they've been pulled from the cask and left into tiny samples just like this, but maybe for 3 or 4 months. And that does really create a level of oxygenation that won't exist in the bottle when it's bottled. And so often our samples are more mature than the whiskey that arrives. So these, a lot of you, poured these off for us in the last month, but I think these samples, if you can stop yourself from drinking the whole thing tonight, will significantly improve over the next several weeks and even just days as you give more air in there. These are a great way to sort of capture. You guys know you're gonna do this all the time to capture the spirit, but they're not inert in the way that the broader industry would want you to think they are. They change in the glass and they sometimes get worse, but mostly with good Scotch get better with air. This has really improved, I think. Now lots of pretty flavors here.
This one's the maltiest one of them all so far.
So yeah, it's very, very malt forward.
And it's got like
kind
a
of
pear
whoppers.
And like an effervescence to it too.
Maybe it's a little awkward. That's fun. It's different. Glengoyne. It could probably it could probably benefit from some air though. These guys could really need some time to open up here.
So I had a Glengoyne 25 last year at the Caltech Athenaeum. It was really nice. Really nice. And I got it, and then everybody at the table wanted to sniff it. And as soon as they sniffed it, 2 other people went and got a glass of Glengoyne.
No, those high. I don't know if you guys have seen. I don't know what's going on with Glengoyne. It seems as though their distributor is moving, and they've just slashed the prices on the distillery bottlings of Glengoyne. So if you look at I don't think there's any 25 left, but the price did go down significantly. The regular 21 is back to like the price it was 4 years ago, whatever, 3 years ago, like that 199, which is, I mean, for 21-year-old Scotch, pretty good these days, like from the distillery. But those, really high quality sherry going into 21, 25. So very, very different character than this one, of course. This is more about the spirit, malt driven for sure. Maybe we should have started with this one. But the next one is very, very intense. And it's been controversial. I've actually had many, many more people email me and tell me they love it than hate it. But I've had one or two people complain. So, it will be controversial, I assume, in this group. Maybe not.
Any leftover bottles stuck in the warehouse?
Not too much. Maybe one or two.
Save me one.
I know. I have you on my list. I'll have to keep looking around. So again, Glenrothes, like Glengoyne, we very, very rarely see. When we do see it, it's third and fourth fill hoggies designed, to go into blending programs, and they're really very hard to wrap your head around at the price point. Obviously, Edrington has done a great job to elevate Glenrothes. It's always been a quality malt, but it's also always been controversial. Like, there are Glenrothes people and non-Glenrothes people. So, which I think hopefully we'll see here. That said, this is this old school sherry character doubling down on that funky Glenrothes spirit. Although I think cleaner than other Glenrothes. For me, there is a sulfur note, but I don't think it moves into that saltpeter, funky, footy, socky thing that you sometimes get. But there is a funk, no doubt. And there isn't a lot of whiskey out there any longer that tastes quite like this. So, first fill sherry butt, 18 years old, starting to really get up there. Still a great proof.
Am I the only one tasting like brandy, Armagnac, grape in this?
No, you're not.
This is if you didn't tell me this was a whiskey and you just handed it to me, I think I would have assumed it was an Armagnac or something.
I totally see that.
Very interesting.
Estery and weird. It kind of has a rum cakey, Christmas cakey thing.
There is a rum esters here.
Yeah, it's high ester for sure.
Yeah, very good mouthfeel.
And earthy funk.
That's the biggest tell. Brandy rarely has the texture quite of a malt, but the aromas are very close.
Yeah, and it doesn't have the heat that some of the other ones had, even though it's up there.
Yeah. There's a sort of overt sweetness in the mid palate that keeps it both from being bitter or high heat, high alcohol. I love bitter flavors, and I find that over the years I've had to temper my my personal preferences sometimes when I'm picking casks, because I find that my palate lends itself to more intense, more extractive, and often for people who don't like this, overtly bitter character. So I am sensitive to that that experience when I'm picking casks and really trying to find balance. Like that's the word that I'm meditating on when I'm selecting a sample. Because generally, like you can always find something someone's gonna like. Like it's not like none of these whiskeys are bad, no matter what. All very, very, very few of the single malt that's been produced in the last 30 years is bad, like in the way that it was bad once, as old, stinky, very bad whiskeys that were made in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, and there's some mediocre whiskey for sure, whiskey without character or whiskey with some flaws, but there's very few whiskeys quite as full of character as this, right?
Yeah, I loved it. The on the nose, initially I thought some Tam Dews that I've had before, that strong sherry note. But then you get into that high ester funk, and I dig it, man. But unfortunately, there's not any more of these left, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
The only way to hang on to them longer is to raise the price, and I don't think anybody wants me to do that. So
yeah, no, at least we get to try it here.
Yeah.
I've gotten a much stronger sherry note off this than the previous ones.
No doubt.
But I've also got some weird funk in the background that's kind of, for some reason, reminding me of Pechuga.
Yeah, the note that like I get a lot of like old leather and that sort of meaty cowhide thing, and that yeah, that's rare these days. It's a unique one. Oh, pretty good. Bourbon's nice, but Scotch is also great. The diversity of flavor that Scotland can afford us just in the last 4 samples. I mean, it's just wild. These are, for all intents and purposes, the same product, right? It's single malt filled into sherry cask, 4 in a row, and they're so different. It's great, incredible. That doesn't happen, I mean, of course, Wild Turkey does not taste like Jim Beam, but the spectrum is much more narrow when it comes to American whiskey. In my opinion, there may be some that disagree here. Although I have had a lot of old Wild Turkey this week, and there's no question that Wild Turkey distilled between 1960 and 1995 was some of the best whiskey that's ever been produced in human history. It's incredible. So if you're ever going to spend money on a fancy bottle of bourbon, I couldn't recommend more buying Old Wild Turkey, which is still available and not crazy expensive. Not to, get off topic here, but you guys ready for the Inchgour? Yeah, it comes up. So this line, the Old and Rare, used to be Douglas Lang's Platinum series. It went with Hunter Lang, and they just changed the name now. Hunter Lang Old and Rare. These are casks that they've specifically segregated. Oftentimes they bring them into their warehouses near Glasgow and monitor them closely. Inchgour, this is a refill PX Hoggy from Inchgour, which is a fine distillery, an underappreciated distillery with a very unusual production capacity. They have this very funky swan neck. The line arm is very unusual and dippy and odd, and the warehousing is the closest Speyside distillery to the water, to the sea, the North Sea there. And so they also have a relatively quick fermentation, if I remember correctly, and a relatively spicy malt, which I think, as opposed to some of the longer fermentation fruity malts that I have to get through my Gunrothes here. And I think it tastes pretty good.
Okay, now this might be the power of suggestion, but you were just talking about wild turkey, and then I picked up the Inchgour, put it up to my nose, and I smelled bourbon.
I love that. Well, the sweet sherry, that's there's just more sugar in this than any of the other ones we've had. But
I wanted to check in with other people. Is it just my mind playing tricks on me? I mean, it wasn't totally bourbon. There was other stuff there too, but
More like rye, it's vegetal.
yeah.
Well, that Inchgour spice with the PX sweetness, and you get this very unusual marriage there.
Yeah.
Which I totally get it,
but the flavor, the taste is just amazing, and it really draws me in, and I just want to sit here and let it dance around in my mouth. It's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this one needs much water though.
Yeah, this one I'm getting like an artisanal salt on cantaloupe.
That saltiness is something I love about Inchgour. It's really
that
such an interesting note.
Super nice. But yeah, it's that weird kind of cantaloupe undertone on it. That's how I grew up eating it. Was you would sprinkle salt on your cantaloupe, it makes it sweeter, and that's how this feels. That it's super sweet, but it doesn't really feel like it's sweet.
Right. I just keep wanting to smack my lips. It's just like, So there's a savoriness about the sweetness, and I think that's the salt that you're talking about, James.
Yeah, that's salt, like salted saltwater taffy, or that sort of like. Yeah, great. I mean, again, this is such a unique expression here, right? There are so few barrels and distilleries that do this. We don't see a lot of Inchgour, right? How many Inchgours have you all had? I mean, probably a lot, but not that many. It's not like some of how many Dallions do we see? There's so many. Although
way more popular in the last couple of years.
No doubt, yeah. There've been a lot more popping up, and that I'm sure that's because of basically Diageo is saying these don't fit the profile, right? So they just get traded out of the system, right? Because
was there this much Dalyuan and Linkwood and whatnot 5 years ago? I feel like I never saw it 5 years ago, but I wasn't looking.
Linkwood was rare. Linkwood was rare for a long time. It's weird that we see more Linkwood now. Okay. Dalyuan's always been a blending malt and traded very regularly. Linkwood's more of a base malt for the Johnny Walkers. They needed more and more higher quantities. Whereas the Dalyuan, I think, is more of a middle. They're making enough of it. They have several distilleries that kind of skirt around it in terms of character. It's not so different from Ben Rennes. It's not so different from Klein Leash. It's not so different from some of the other ones. Whereas Inchgour, they basically have this as like a top note, I imagine, or I forget what the blend that's based on Inchgour is. Maybe it's part of Teachers. It's not Teachers. There's one blend that it goes with. I have no memory for exactly what that is right now, but I just think it's incredible that all these distilleries still operate. Thank God. They haven't found the need to consolidate production. They very much tried. Isla Bay, they've created these distilleries that are meant to the most modern distilleries are meant to be able to create all different styles of malt so that they can homogenize the source of production. I don't think it's worked the way they wanted it to. So, these plants remain part of the portfolio, and I suppose they're still making enough money that it works. But I don't know. There's a lot of Scotch distilleries now, though. A lot of the new ones are not quite as good as they should be, unfortunately.
So this is a BX Sherry. Would you say this is a good representation of Inchgour in general? Because this is fantastic. So should I be seeking out other Inchgours, or is this an exception?
You should seek out old Inchgour and Pedro Jimenez Sherry for sure. But if you can find more, you let me know. I mean, I think in some ways, Sherried Inchgour. I mean, Inchgour has this hardcore malty saltiness to it as a note, a spiciness, I guess. And some of the younger ones can be rough, right? A little more intense, especially if they're not masked with some sort of wine cask. But yeah, I would seek it out. We've done really well with our Inchgours recently. The ones we've had. I don't see a lot of bad Inchgour out there, which is good. We did maybe 10 years ago. More of that neutral. It's better wood in general on a lot of these. And I'm not sure if that's, it may be that, listen, 24 years ago, these guys there's a very good chance that Douglas Lang bought this whiskey more or less at birth and either transferred it into this barrel of themselves or, was very specific about which lot they were buying, 24 years ago. So it's hard to say why this whiskey would have been put into this barrel because it's not surely something that is normal practice for the distillery is old hogs, Pedro Jimenez hogshead, the huge majority, 95, 97% of everything that's distilled here is put into refill, second, third, fourth fill hogshead. So that little portion that does get filled into this cask for this long is extremely rare. Like these are expensive whiskeys, and I think they still are wildly undervalued for how tiny the access to anything like this is in the whole world. So, good values.
But definitely tastes different from the young Ichigo, the 24.
Mm.
It's much. I'll bring you Sunday, Vadim, to taste. I got I don't know if you can see, a 9-year-old.
What is it, Milroy?
It's an old K&L bottling, right?
Old Jan Milroy.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But
that one's a little rougher, though, huh?
That's rougher.
That's a spicy.
But I love it. But it's
those are
it's
good.
rougher.
Still has a kick, though.
Good
Yeah,
move.
that's from 2018.
Speaking of Jack Rose, I drank a lot of K&L picks at Jack Rose, weirdly enough.
That's awesome. He's always been so cool with us, so I'm a huge fan.
Wow, that's great. This
Inchgour is fantastic.
Yeah, no rush on that. Take your time.
$2 though.
I think it's a deal.
Is there a special price?
Not that I imagine, but if you want a special price, I can make one. She wanted me to look right now. Let's make a special price.
Thank you.
So just as a reminder, this is being recorded right now.
Ooh.
Do we
I'm
need
fine with
shut?
it.
Do we
Put it
need
in
to
the
shut the
chat.
recording? Okay.
Put it in the chat if there's anything. We're
No,
gonna
I won't do anything illegal.
consider picking.
Anybody who reads this and can email me will get the price. No good, no big deal. I don't actually know what I can offer you for this particular product off the top of my head, but probably something. Just booting up here,
Yeah,
Sorry
this inch cower is fantastic. It's so good.
You're digging it.
There's a 15-year-old inch gower from Old Malt Cask in your
Oh,
inventory
they're
as
all
well.
gonna be decent, but this one is pretty damn good.
This
Oh,
one's-
that's pretty fun stuff too. That's got the yeah, that's got the inch gower funk too. But we also had that great deal on the Mossburn. That's a good
yeah,
deal.
that's crazy.
Yeah, those guys didn't sell any of that stuff. So, let's see. I can for sure offer 10% off for anybody who watches this. If you if you want to order, just I have to personally apply the discount. So just email me. Most of you know where to find me. If you don't, my email is David Gerard, GIRARD @klwines.com. And yeah, I can definitely give you 10% off.
Appreciate it.
But don't tell your friends.
So it's what David Gerard you said?
No, David Gerard, just one word.
All right.
I think David OG @KL Wines works too, if you want to keep it simple.
I'll toss it in the chat for your easy emailing. There you go. Thanks, Jane.
Amazing. Let's see how much we have left. There can't be much. Yeah, we have a good chunk. 30
Website
bottles in the
says
warehouse.
42.
That's great.
Oh, and it comes in this gorgeous red box, which is insane. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Expensive.
It's funny, like last year we dumped the boxes because they wanted to charge us like 20 pounds of case or something like that. With like added $10. It's like $10 a bottle, 24 pounds or something like that a case. They're 3-pack cases, right? So we like skipped them, and I had so many people like, "Do you have a box? Do you have a box?" And I was like, "All right, we're just gonna get the boxes." And then this year they were like, I was like, "Is it the same price with or without the box?" They're like, "Yeah, same price, doesn't matter." Like,
We're
lovely.
about to head over into the Bunnahabhain last pour. So I
Yeah.
turn on their cameras while we do that. Figure out how to do
Yeah,
gallery.
let's do it.
We're just missing James. James, are you here?
No, James.
There we go. Beautiful.
Oh.
Oh, that whiskey room is even better in real life. I do promise you that. David, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate you taking the time, and we just want to say cheers to you.
Oh, cheers to you guys. Thanks for all your support and your interest and, friendship, kindness. This Buna is pretty good, huh? Holy
Everyone
moly.
smile to your camera for just a second. Got it. That's a great shot. So the star of the show, this 31-year-old Bunnahabhain, can you tell us about
Also sold out, I think, right?
it?
There's not much to say. This period, interestingly, like they seem to have been filling the barrels quite low, or at least a lot of the stuff in 91. The 89s are even worse. The 89s are like,
Did we lose him? $5 says his phone died.
They overheat a lot when you got Zoom going.
Yeah, especially if he's charging at the same time. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna hit pause on the recording and hopefully he comes back. Welcome back.
That is
we're
a
back
really
here. Sorry,
solid
guys.
Buna.
You digging that?
This is so good.
Box.
Classic.
Yeah, special.
Are we saying, David? Were you saying Bunnahabhain for everyone? Is you were gonna go
Yeah,
Oberon?
everybody gets a Bunnahabhain.
There is
Yeah,
four
there's
left.
not. Are there
Four
four
left in the
left? I
system.
can't believe it's not sold out.
Two
I
two
mean, it's not
Hollywood,
cheap.
two over.
Not sold out.
Not
Excellent.
sold out. It's not cheap, but it is very good. You guys have seen other Bunas in this period. I think this one has kind of a. Did anybody have the Rites of Passage one that came out recently? It's a similar age.
Yes,
You
I did.
know, yeah, that was a fun whiskey for sure, but it didn't show the kind of depth and finesse that this one
No,
has.
no, this has more finesse, more depth.
Yeah, and
The
and I think
Rites of
that's
Passage, Mannockmore, I think was the good one.
that's the
Yeah.
best one on that series. Yeah, I agree with you. The Lefroy was interesting, but those were also like long. Those were second maturations, which I didn't realize until later. Like I think that all of the Rites of Passage whiskeys seem to have been filled into the barrels that we listed them as sometime in 2012. So long maturations, right? But um, nonetheless, very different from this, which would have started in Sherry and spent the whole 31 years there.
I think this one surpasses the Rites of Passage.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a different level, both in terms of cost and quality than the others we've tasted. But Scotch does change. At this age, there's no question that there's a next level for Scotch that is unlocked by age. And a huge part of it is the spirit, of course, the quality of the cask. What these. It's really interesting to think about what whiskey distilled today will taste like in 30 years. Will we have anything like this? I don't know. But it's interesting now to see what it was then.
What year is the break? What do you think is the apex to the curve? 30 years old?
Every spirit is different. Yeah, every
So for
spirit is
Bunnahabhain,
different.
or just every cask is different?
Every cask, every distillery, every yeah, I mean, most of the great own bottlings are very far from single cask, right? So, I don't I think it's a lot harder to find great single cask whiskey of even this caliber than it is necessarily to be a distiller, like to create a 30-year-old Bunnahabhain with a huge selection of 30-year-old Bunnahabhain. Um, you know, that's a complicated task, but surely picking one out of that group that's superlative, I think is an equal task in some ways. I don't, we're, a lot of these single casks, when you get down to it, isn't so much that somebody has curated them or necessarily anointed them for our enjoyment now. It's luck. A lot of why these exist is just pure dumb luck. Like this didn't get bottled at some time before and
Yep.
remained on their books, and someone decided this seems like a good time to look at this, and we pull it up, and maybe this wasn't good 15 years ago, or wasn't as good, or wasn't special enough for whatever they were doing, or they had too many, or whatever it is. But it's I feel really lucky when I taste whiskey like this because there's so little of it, so few people that appreciate it. Really, we all fight for these bottles, but ultimately you know the connoisseurs of Scotch at this level are really limited. And so anybody who shares this passion, has a camaraderie because of our appreciation of this. Most people would not find this so special. Maybe this is overt enough to cross the boundaries of being, acceptable to all the drinking public. But there's no question that this is for the initiated, right? People who really appreciate it are going to enjoy it that much more. But I don't know. Yeah, hopefully we'll continue to get stuff like this in the coming years. It's hard to see where the market's going right now because of the impending tariffs that we will certainly be suffering from soon. So, I would say be sure to start stocking up because it's just going to get more
Are you
expensive.
seeing tariffs on Scotch? I mean, really?
I mean,
Tariffs
next year we will have tariffs on Scotch.
on Scotch? Wow.
Well, we had tariffs for all the 4 years of Trump
Oh, okay.
before,
All right.
and 25% tariffs. So that's why during that period you'll see I teaspoon a huge number of our whiskeys that we bottled in 2018 onward. So yeah, it's a huge concern for us. Yeah, single malt will almost certainly become much more expensive.
Hey, bring me all those teaspoons back. Those are great.
We're gonna have to. Yeah, I mean, it's unclear what will and what, we might get lucky and they just ignore Scotch. Like it's very political, right? It's like certain things will be like before it was French wine under 14%, but over was fine. So like everybody in France just like wrote 14% on their wines, which is crazy. And single malt Scotch, but not blended malt or blended Scotch of any kind. It's just totally weird. It's just like, yeah, I think it's bureaucratic, right? It's someone wants this much revenue from the tariffs. This is how much single malt Scotch is imported versus blended malt. Or, of course, the blended malt's where the money is. So the big companies are very sensitive to that. And so maybe they have more influence and they say, well, we don't mind the price of single malt going up because it's such a small part of our market. We'd love to take those margins when you drop them off. And they all did, right? Of course. So maybe there will be no on the big name brands, maybe there'll be no change because they've already bumped them up from the last time and they never came down, if you notice, generally.
Yeah.
But for single cask, single malt that I buy from Scotland, all of that's going to be 25% more expensive. So, still going to be cheaper than most whiskeys. Surely from, I feel worse for other independent bottlers, single cask nation, Adelphi, these other guys who have to go through 3 tiers. Like when you have the raw cost go up 25% and everybody from the importer, the distributor, and the retailer need to make 25 to 30 points to stay in business, you're compounding that price that many times. Rather than like, it's not like if you have a $100 bottle of Scotch, 25% tariff, everybody just raises their price $25. It's $125 to the importer. That guy needs to make his margin, so that's going to be a raise of more than 25% because more than $25 because 25% of 125 is higher than 25% of 100. It's math. So that's just compounding. So we'll definitely be feeling it, unfortunately. I think, we'll find ways around it like we have before, but still be good whiskey coming our way.
Hey, David, this has been a really good lineup, and hopefully you'll come back with something similar. And I think that's great you guys are carrying dram fools because I do buy that.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are affordable and good. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really high quality stuff there. The other line, which we probably do sooner than later, because um, the batch of signatory that's just come in, I mean, that's a cracking lineup right there. So we could flip one of these together, Vadim, pretty soon with that lineup. It's two younger grains, a 10-year-old first fill sherry Ben Nevis, an 11-year-old first fill sherry Glen Alecky, and some older Highland Park and Macallan. And the prices are very, very reasonable. Signatory was incredible this year. They really responded to our plea, I would say, to make sure that our customers were getting great values, and they more or less cut their prices in half. So the line of signatories that's out right now is some of the best whiskey for your dollar we've had in years. So
That's good to hear.
yeah, check those out. The Ardmore is quite funky, but 17-year-old first field sherry. If you know Ardmore, Sherried Ardmore is a funk monster always. This does not for everybody for sure, but it does not disappoint on that.
Decline altitude 11 is Brad. I agree.
Yeah, nuts. 68% alcohol and dark sherry. An absolute monster.
Does that have enough corn for you?
68.
68. I don't know what they were. They were obviously filling it higher proof. And maybe very warm warehouses, perhaps, or maybe even concrete warehouses. I'm not sure exactly how they were so high, keeping them so high. But they're very wild whiskeys, and they're very, very good.
I mean, the Macallan, the 15-year-old Macallan isn't a slouch either. That's 60.
No, that's a big boy. Refill Macallan, and then there's the first fill Macallan, the Highland Park, which probably is my favorite of all of them, is the Highland Park, although a lot of people will sort of hem and haw over it, but that whiskey has opened up beautifully.
The 19?
Yeah, the 19-year Orkney, Secret Orkney. It needs some time, like the air really helps it, but the first dram when I opened my first bottle arrived, I left it in the glass for 3 or 4 hours. And by the end, it was just, next level, just mango, super tropical, crazy old school cherry monster that just not seeing on the regular these days. And it's not cheap, but.
Which one was that?
This is Secret Orkney Signatory. It's a 19-year Highland Park.
Gotcha.
Yeah, very, very special whiskey. Yeah, there you go. He knows what's up. All of these drew. So there was this period after. I shouldn't probably talk about this on camera.
You want me to hit pause?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we had technical difficulties.
Thank you.
We're back.
So yeah, check out the signatories. Enjoy your Bunnahabhain. I got not a whole lot more to add. You guys have questions for me? Sorry for the technical difficulties.
I have a question, but it has nothing to do with whiskey. Are you related to any of the other Oath and Gerards that I'm aware of? Linda, Dominique, Niels?
Oh, yes, of course. Linda is my mother.
Oh, okay.
Yes, former Air Talk producer. If you're a KPCC fan.
Yeah.
And she is wonderful. Dominique is a distant cousin. He is the esteemed director of Halloween 5. The best Halloween, by the way, if you've not seen it. Surely the most outrageous. So yeah, that's, what was the other one?
Niels.
Neil, that one, listen, I'm related to every
Oath and Gerard. Yeah, he's only 22 years old, and he's a French actor. So you might not know him. He's probably a distant relative. Are you a Swiss citizen?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I was born in Switzerland.
Oh, okay.
There's a little town outside of Neuchâtel with about 40 or 50 Oath and Gerards. And it's not thought that this was like two families. It's ultimately the same Gerard as Gerard Perregaux, the watchmaker. Distant cousins of ours, like 400, 500 years ago. But they think that maybe someone was named Othenin or Othen, Ota, or something like that, like Odin, right? Or odd name, and that he named his children his first name and his last name. But that would have been like many centuries ago. So yeah, we're all the same. The Othen and Gerards. There's only one little town, and they all come from there.
Yeah.
Well, funny enough that you mentioned Swiss, I'm actually going to the gala, the Swiss American Chamber of Commerce event tomorrow night.
Oh, that should be exciting.
So that should be good.
Hopefully they're pouring some Swiss wine.
Huh?
Hopefully they're pouring some Swiss wine. The Swiss wine we can get right now is really, really good in California. So
Nice.
a couple of good importers.
They're sponsored by a Swiss whiskey brand, who's the one that got me the tickets.
Oh, really? Which one?
Seven Seals.
Oh, yeah.
They're not bad.
That's
the one
really
on the Alps.
Honorable.
That's really serious stuff.
That's the one by the ski resort on the Alps.
I'm pretty sure they like I'm pretty sure that they helicopter the barrels like up to the top of the mountain, and maybe that's someone else. I don't know. Anyway, Swiss whiskey is a very silly thing. They do all sorts of crazy things. I
But
remember
they
once
helicopter everything in Switzerland because
that's true.
because of the terrain, right?
But they like take the barrels up to like the top of the mountain, like leave them there. It might not have been Seven Seals. I remember we went to Zug and visited Etter, the famous Kirsch producer, eau de vie producer. And he's like, "We're doing whiskey," and I was like, "That's great! Like, let's go taste it." And it's like, "Oh, we don't really have any, but we like age it in this wet cellar, and basically the barrels are like floating in water, more or less. Like it's outrageous." So they do all sorts of goofy things, but there's some good stuff.
Nice.
There's a very, very good culture of drinking single malt in Switzerland as well. There's a few really choice hotels and retailers that have been a little bit like the Italians have been like picking barrels for decades and have relationships with Gordon MacPhail and a couple of these other bottlers that are really significant, and they're getting access that even Kano can have to certain older stock. So if you're ever traveling in Switzerland, you can find some cool whiskeys.
What is a Gerard single malt? Is it out of France?
I don't know that one. Gerard?
Yes.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
They have a Gerard, is it Gerard? A wine, isn't it?
There's David Gerard Winery, which is in California, and then I think there's just Gerard wine of some kind. There are a couple other Gerards.
In the
different
Rhone
Gerards.
Something. Yeah, I thought there was a French one, or maybe I'm getting.
And I think there are more than one French one. There are a lot of GER. That's more common in France. GERARD. Yeah. Which is more or less the same name.
Yeah.
On a side note, David, what do you think was the favorite pour of the night?
Ooh, yes.
For me?
For the group.
What do you think we thought was good?
I mean,
say for you that works too.
Obviously, the Bunnahabhain was so special, right? Can we argue with that?
We voted. It was a tough choice, but the group has voted on their favorite pour of the night. Oh, Girard.
Giraud. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, slightly different. Yeah, what was it, guys? I'm excited to hear.
All right. So surprisingly, it's not the Bunnahabhain.
Okay.
So Inchiauer ran away with it.
Yeah, I'm with my people. That's great.
60% voted for Inchiauer. Bunnahabhain took second place. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Well, and I think at times we vote not just based on price or looking at it going, hey, you know, a lot of people aren't going to get that bottle. What's a bottle that we're most likely to buy that we really like?
Yeah. Yeah, that is probably the most value for your dollar there in terms of unique experience, obvious quality. I mean, listen, the Dalio and the Creality, those are house pours. They're great whiskeys. You know, they're not expensive compared to normal whiskey. Like you see the price of like Balvenie 12, you're like, that's like most stores, like we have a very good price right now because I'm giving it away. Like that is my cost. Because if we don't do that, or you'll shop somewhere else, right? Because everybody has these low, crazy low prices right now. They're giving away product because they want you to shop at their store. Most store, you know, a supermarket would put Balvenie 12 at $80, right? This is $99. Like it's crazy deals for these, but you're never going to have the level of character in $100 15-year-old malt that you do in this. And the fact that it's not $1,000, like if it were bottled by Diageo, would likely be $600 or $700 is incredible. You know, we're very lucky to have these. So keep it going.
Thank you for sharing these with us. This has been absolutely fantastic.
I'm so happy you guys enjoyed them.
Happy to have you on anytime you want, and we can do an in-person event at some point.
Yeah, let's try to rock the signatory tasting before the end of the year if we can squeeze it in. I don't know if you have time.
We'll try to. Let's chat when you're back from Kentucky and try to set something up. I know a lot of people already bought those bottles, but maybe not 18-year-old, 19-year-old. We can put something together. Let's chat when you're back.
All right, brother. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
you.
Good night.
See you soon.
Kentucky.
Ciao.